Good day and welcome to the VMS software webinar entitled Modernizing Your Alpha Systems. We are delighted that you're here and taking the time out of your busy day to sit in on this presentation and participate with us. My name is Terry Holmes. I'm responsible for sales and marketing. With me is Mr. Eddie Orcutt. Eddie is our Vice President of Software Engineering, and we're delighted to have a special guest with us today, Mr. Al Meyer. Al is a Senior Fellow at IOMaxis. IOMaxis is a VSI Allegiance partner, and in particular, IOMaxis and VSI have worked closely together in the development of some of the products and services that we're going to be talking to you about today. And their expertise is in many areas, including doing a lot of U.S. federal government work in ITAR compliance. So we're delighted to have Al with us today, and in particular, you'll hear from him in a little while on some of the specific products and ideas that IOMaxis in general was helpful to influence VSI's decision to come out with products, support, and services for Alpha systems. So we'll proceed in the way that we have in past webinars. We would like to make a presentation that you can listen to and to ask questions. And then once the presentation is over, we will start to field some of those questions. So without further ado, let's proceed and get started. So we thought it was important just to give a little bit of background information. So again, for those of you who are not aware, to talk about the historical transition of OpenVMS, of the operating system. Of course, this goes back to HPE's announcement in 2013 that they were going to stop the support of the platform. And when VSI formed in 2014, its sole purpose is to do everything and be an open clearinghouse for everything and anything having to do with OpenVMS. And we started in July, in fact, this month, 4 years ago. So we're about to celebrate our 4th anniversary. What did we purchase from HPE? We purchased the exclusive rights to develop new versions on OpenVMS. It purchased a perpetual worldwide license, the trademark, and the two probably most important things. One is the right to release OpenVMS in any hardware, which will lead us to the x86 port, as well as a fundamental business agreement between HPE and VSI for the orderly transition of customers moving from HPE to VSI. Wherefore, new purchases from customers, HPE gains the hardware business and hardware maintenance, and VSI gains the software and the software support or software maintenance. Who is VSI? VSI was created in 2014, and we are part of TerraCloud Corporation. We're based here in Bolton, Massachusetts, which is about 15 minutes down the road from Maynard, Massachusetts, and the mill, which was the old Digital Equipment Corporation or DEC headquarters. We have approximately 85 employees. The majority are here in Bolton, Massachusetts, USA, but we also have offices in Malmo, Sweden, where developers sit, and other remote locations in various European countries and elsewhere in North America. Of course, the majority of our people are involved in the developing and engineering of new products, which we'll talk about specifically for Alpha. Our strategy is very simple. It's to be everything a clearinghouse for OpenVMS, whether it's licenses and support, training, consulting, offering VSI cloud solutions. So we want to be everything having to do with OpenVMS. Very simple and straightforward. We think it's important that you know that you are not alone. If you are an Alpha user today and have been probably for quite some time, you truly are not alone. I've been amazed in my 14 months with VSI, the names and the prominence of those organizations, those corporations, both public and private, who continue to use Alpha systems today, whether it's in the financial services area, the manufacturing sector, healthcare, public transit, automotive, et cetera, government. So there are many, many users out there today. In terms of VSI and licensing, of course, since we are the developer of the product, we have been doing this since 2014. We are the only company who can help you if you're a VAX, Alpha, or Integrity user, migrate and move forward to an x86 platform if you so desire. And because of this, and being the only developer, we are the only company who can offer you the rights to new versions for future licenses, provided you are on VSI support. And speaking of support, we have 4 levels, 3 24/7, Platinum, Gold, and Silver, as well as Bronze. With the Platinum and the Gold, you get assigned a technical account manager, you get VSI software patch analysis, and you get systems health check updates. In terms of the Platinum, you get immediate response. Gold is 1 hour, Silver is 2 hour, and Bronze is 9x5 support. We get oftentimes asked a question, well, you're a 4-year-old company. Yes, you're part of a bigger organization called Terra Cloud Corporation, but how are you doing? Well, we're pleased to report that we're doing well. From 2016 to 2017, our business nearly doubled. So far in fiscal year 2018, which is also the calendar year, we're halfway through, and this year looks very strong. We've already achieved the same level of booked orders in the first 6 months of this year that we achieved all of last year. So the trend continues of customer transitioning from HPE to VSI, and we're quite pleased about this, and we find it accelerating. We are also doing some things more proactively in terms of marketing and partner outreach. Of course, these webinars are part of that, and later we'll also mention some events coming up in the next 12 months that we're going to be sponsoring and participating in and inviting you to on a more regional level. So the simple question is, why modernize your alphas? Well, you probably know all the answers to this question, but let's just state some obvious things. 1, the high availability of OpenVMS. 2, its nature of secure design. 3, you trust it. You've used it for a long time, you trust it. There are also financial advantages and financial issues. A couple of years ago, Eddie put together a presentation which we basically repeated at last year's boot camp, talking about the total cost of ownership and the fact that in certain environments it really is less expensive to run than Linux, given all the various factors. The cost of other options are very expensive. We won't go into all those, but you understand that. The cost of migrating off of OpenVMS can be very expensive, very painful, and oftentimes not successful. I think it's important that you also understand that VSI realized, again, thanks through your efforts and the efforts of our alliance partner, IOMaxis, to convince us that the Alpha installed base is an important customer base that we need to pay attention to. When we announced the formation of VSI in 2014, it was not our intention to develop products and support and services for Alpha users. But through your voice, we heard you, and we finally came out with products that we're going to be talking about. So we're delighted about that. And we also offer various tools for modernizing your Alpha systems. Some of those tools include the ability to gain L1 and L2 customer service level support for your older HPE systems. We realize that many customers may be stuck on HPE version 8.4 and prior due to various reasons. We want you to know that we're here to support you. We're also here to tell you that we can help you through consulting being available to help you through any of these issues and any problems that can lead you to a path forward. Of course, we have our upgraded licenses and full support. We're also now offering VSI Cloud Solutions, and of course our x86 product, which will take you to a virtual place. Now let's talk a little bit about VSI Alpha Engineering and Development, and we'll turn the time over to Eddie and to Al.
Okay, since VSI has come into existence, from version 8.4 and above anyway, we have over 515 defect repairs to date. And to try to further delineate where those come from, the source of these defect repairs, 343 came from internal bugzillas, as we call them, DZs, and that's from our own internal testing. We have our own QTV group. We do extensive testing on OpenVMS. We adhere to IEEE standards for testing. So we test continually, 24/7, 365 days a year. We are paneled on VMS for regression tests, in addition to point unit testing as well. Externally, from customers have having issues, with the code, we have fixed 118 customer problems. And also from customers who bought previously through HP, when they elevate a case to VSI, it goes through the QUICS elevation procedure, and there have been 54 cases elevated that way. So a lot of different methods in which we test and we receive bugs and get the bugs and fix them. But again, over 515 since version 8.4 that we have fixed. And I talked about QTV a minute ago. These are the number of test hours we have at the point of release, meaning that up to the time when we put a release out for a particular version, these are the number of hours that we actually test before we release the product. So for 8.4, 2L1, and 2L2, 2L2 is the performance release, over 120,000 hours for version 8.4-2, 2L2 would be the performance release. Over 120,000 hours in testing. For 8.4 2L1, there was 54,000 hours. 2L1 was the security update where we actually, added increased SSL capability. We tested over 54,000 hours. And then for our new release we're coming out with, we've already have over 40,000 hours of testing, and it will increase every day and every week and month as we go forward before the next release. So we do test extensively. We do test full regression. These are the test hours for that. Al, you want to go over some of the alpha enhancements, the subsystems, the benefits? I think you're on mute, Al. Al, can you unmute? Go ahead, just go. Okay, Al, we can't hear, but I will go over some of the enhancements we have in the alpha release. There are PE driver enhancements. These enhancements are above and over what you have on version 7.3-2 and earlier releases of VMS. So PE driver enhancements, LAN driver enhancement, file system improvements, lock manager fixes, AMDS, and since version 7.3-2, there are actually over 179 enhancements to VMS since that version. And again, as I mentioned in the slide prior to that, 515 plus bug fixes in version 8.4. And you can see the benefits, of the select number of improvements that we show out of 179. These are some of the ones that we have made.
And now I unmuted.
Go ahead.
Okay, so operating system and layered products. Oops, one slide too many. For Alpha, I'm showing the operating system and the layered products combined on one slide because the way we're selling Alpha, it is a bundled solution, meaning that we bundle the licenses and support into one bundle. There's one part number that you buy. You get all of these products here for one part number for one price. We actually give you two license packs, one for the operating system and then one for the layered products. We get all of these products with this one part number that's out there. In addition, it is basically sold also per tier, and there are three tiers. There's a work group, departmental, and enterprise class. So that would be the way that you would buy this. If you had a departmental machine, then you would buy one license per machine, and then you would get all of these software products we'll list here. The versions, you can see the versions that we currently have released. And these versions that are out there, or these products that are out there, are unlimited within the tier, meaning that if you have, say, an ES40, for example, you're in the departmental tier, you have 2 CPUs in your box, and if you want to go to, say, 4 CPUs, You can fully add SMP capabilities, add the CPUs to that box with no additional license cost because you're staying within the same tier, and these are tiered pricing models. And these are unlimited licenses, like you get unlimited user licenses, you get unlimited user license for the compilers as well, instead of it being priced per concurrent use. They're unlimited within the tier of the hardware platform you're buying for. And then just to separate the open source products, you can see there's SIFS or Samba that's out there, and then the secure web server, and then Tomcat, which would be the Java extension. There's also, we investigated Mosquito, PHOC, and ZeroMQ. There are other open source products we can put on Alpha. The main restriction we have at the moment is the version of Java supported on Alpha, which is version 1.5. But if it's not a Java dependency, we can put any Lea product or open source product out there. So why upgrade? Al, do you want to go over any of this? Are you back off of mute?
Yep, I'm back off of mute.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody, and sorry for the technological issues. They weren't VAX or Alpha related, I assure you. Anyhow, the modern hardware that we're talking about now is that a lot of our customers don't realize that there's still a lot of capacity left in their Alpha platforms, even though the hardware hasn't been manufactured since the mid-90s and on. There are still quite a few upgrade options that you can explore if you wish to solve some of the real life problems that people are facing. Eddie already mentioned the SMP upgrades. If you happen to have purchased an ES80 and didn't fill it with CPUs, you now can do so without any financial penalty as far as licensing costs for the layered products and or the operating system. Now, costs, again, with specific third-party software packages, you have to deal with that particular organization depending upon their licensing strategy. However, from a VSI perspective, it's fair game to fill your systems up with as much capacity as the hardware will allow. The other capabilities that you now have is, some of you people, we're going to get a little technical here. The Alpha systems, the Wildfire systems, or Marvel systems, as you guys may have known them as, were limited on their PCI bus structure with PCI-X, specifically PCI-X version 1.2. 1.2 stopped at 64 bits, 133 megahertz for the maximum speed for the slot. Version 2.0, which is not included on the Alpha platform, extended that speed up to 266 megahertz. However, what this still does give you the ability to is you can now buy and still purchase 10 gigabit Ethernet adapters to install on your existing Alpha platforms. So if you have an I/O bottleneck problem, you can now insert a 10 gig card. And I know there's some people out there that are instantly jumping on your calculators to calculate that out. Yes, the 133 megahertz 64-bit bus can deliver almost 70% of a 10 gig bandwidth. So you will get almost full utilization out of your 10 gig cards. These cards are readily available and can be placed into your Alpha platforms. It's called an X-frame card, and if you still have a support contract with your HP or your service provider, these parts are still available with actual HP part numbers, and they have been fully qualled on VSI systems. As far as disk I/O, there's also expandability here. You now can actually go up to a 4 gigabit adapter HBA on your Alpha platforms as well. Again, expanding the amount of I/Os per second, and also expanding your amount of bandwidth. So next thing that we also offer the customers, and we suggest that they do, is to start eliminating rotating storage. Rotating storage, of course, has inherent latency issues with positioning the heads and the rotating media. Those now can be replaced with solid-state drives, which have been considerably cheaper over the years. So now the limiting factor of your I/O bandwidth will be actually your controller and or your bus interface, but it will no longer be the storage devices themselves. As far as modernization continues, there is also no reason that if you are an emulator user, you now have a wide variety of options to expand. You also now can run your emulator on highly new platforms. These new platforms now have PCIe multiple lanes. So now you can take advantage of state-of-the-art network adapters and state-of-the-art fiber channel adapters. The only issue is you need to check with your various emulator provider to find out if there is support for that particular adapter. Because they, of course, even if they are bare metal or other forms of hosting software for the emulator, they will have to provide some type of an interface to the host adapter physical hardware. You need to check with those people, but in one particular case, one of the emulator companies now that we've worked closely with is AVT, and AVT, for example, does not have any limitations as far as bandwidth to your new network adapters. So imagine a VAX having a 10 gig network adapter on it. Kind of an interesting, or fiber channel disks. So these are also capabilities that you need to explore that will help you expand it. If you've already made the transition to an emulated platform, you can expand the use of those emulated parts. Eddie?
And one other thing I wanted to mention here also, Al, was that I have actually an error on this chart. It's a typo. On the disk I/O in the right-hand column, instead of just 1, 2, and 4 gigabit speeds for the HBAs, if you're on an emulated environment, you can also go to 8, 16, and 32 gig as well. So that was my bad. I will correct this slide before we get this sent out to you. But in emulated environment, you can take advantage of the most modern hardware that is there, that runs on the x86 platform, and VMS through the emulators will have access to that. So what did VSI announce? We announced last year, in February 2017, we announced a standard release of OpenVMS on Alpha. The version is 8.4-2L1. It runs on most all Alpha platforms today. Then there's what we call a performance build, or version 8.4-2L2. It is restricted to running on EV6 and EV7 platforms only, because we actually rebuilt OpenVMS to take advantage of the EV6, EV7 chipset, which has the byte word instructions and other instructions and hardware. So we no longer have to emulate byte word instructions, load store instructions with, masking. We can make one call as one hardware instruction. Once we rebuilt VMS, you will see in later slides that a lot of the images within VMS and user images as well will shrink because there's less instructions to execute, so things are faster. The layered products are the same as on Integrity, and we will show more Alpha products within the roadmap, which we showed in prior slides, and we showed the layered product releases in the prior slide. Terry's also gone over the support levels, but one thing we need to mention is the US ITAR support in partnership with IO Maxes, that for our US government customers that we can, provide support in classified environments. And Al may want to go through that a little more, but the support levels that are out there, the bronze, silver, and platinum support levels available for Alpha customers, the US ITAR offerings are there as well. So Al, did you want to enumerate a little more on the ITAR offering and the support levels?
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. I will. The ITAR support, also people who are on the international side think that this is a US only. The ITAR regulations are basically to control and to manage sensitive data that you may have on your systems. It originally was designed to protect sensitive data within the United States government. However, more and more commercial companies are using the ITAR model for being able to control access to their data and the release of their information. So basically what it is, it's a mechanism, it's a set of policies and trusted individuals that have the ability to safeguard data on a customer system so that the information is not disclosed to people who do not have the right to see it. In the case of US, that just means that if you have a worldwide support center, you will basically firewall off the data and the origin of the data and the origin of the applications. The customers and support organizations are still free to do fixes. However, the intermediate, the ITAR support team, has to create reproducers that will basically insulate the customer from the support engineer if they are not US citizens. And that is pretty much the role that we play. However, we are now being asked also for banking institutions and other financial institutions to start employing this thing because of the control of their data. Thank you.
So Terry, you want to, this is basically the same line as what you had in the prior slide.
Yeah, so again, basically we, why update your releases on Alpha? Well, again, we, VSI realized, thanks to feedback from you and thanks to Al and Kathy Ferris from Myomaxis, we realized there's a large demand, and we've realized that there's a large demand. The business and the involvement that we've had with Alpha users so far has been a very positive thing for VSI. Obviously, it's important that we continue to support the OpenVMS customer base, but obviously that through this modernization tools that we have, that there's a plan that you can grasp onto some of those tools to move your platform forward and your environment forward to x86, and again, x86 when it's ready and available.
And just one other note is that please realize this is continued support for the Alpha-based customer. There will be new releases coming out for Alpha 8.5 and 9.2. So again, this is a renewed support for Alpha. So supported systems, this is for the general release, the 8.4 2L1. Remember, there are two releases on OpenVMS Alpha. There's the 2L1, which is generic. It supports most all of the Alpha models that are out there. You can see the list. You can see the list we initially supported a year ago, and then the other ones without the asterisk that we also support. Again, they're broken up into tiers because this is the way we license OpenVMS on Alpha. There's one part number that you buy OpenVMS and all of the layered products for each server within each tier. So again, as I was talking about and we had on prior slides, if you have, say, an ES40, for example, with only 2 CPUs, you can add additional CPUs with no additional license costs. So it's a win-win for the customer, to be able to upgrade and take full advantage of his environment.
Also, Eddie, if I may, we also want to remind you folks, too, that the folks who have made the switch to emulation, the two premier commercial emulators do, in fact, emulate the high-end Alpha system and instruction set. So they are, in fact, viable candidates to operate at the top tier because they do support the additional instructions of the EV6 and EV7 platforms.
Okay, so for the performance release, version 8.4-2L2, it is a subset, again, of the Alphas out there. These are the systems that have the EV6 and EV7 chipset. You can see the models that are out there is basically on the low end. Again, this is tiered just like it was for the prior 2L1 release. The work group tier is the DS line, the departmental is the ES line, and then enterprise will be the GS. And you can see the family picture over on the right, and you can see the model numbers and the CPU variants that are within each model. But these are the systems that are supported with your performance release, and we will go over here in later slides the advantage of the 2L2 release. And then support roadmap. It's important to note that's depicted on this slide, and we're showing out through at least 2025 on here. It would get kind of jumbled if we went really past that too far, but at least we're showing a 7-year roadmap here. But we support the current version and one version back of OpenVMS under standard support indefinitely. And then as we come out with newer releases, the third and fourth and the previous releases out there, we're going to what's called prior version support at the end of a minimum of 5 years. But also please note that PVS support, there's also an extended engineering support that is also available for customers who still need engineering support for the other versions. But again, that would be through an extended engineering support contract. But this is the support roadmap for the Alpha releases that are out there. So the specifics on the performance build, because again, we rebuilt OpenVMS for the EV6, EV7 processors. So what is it? Again, we rebuilt OpenVMS and we've leveraged additional instructions. Al, you want to go further into what we did?
Certainly. So as you folks know who have done code development on the Alpha platforms, you realize, of course, that the compilers always gave you a rich set of switches that you could do to help give the compiler hints about its target platform. By default, the compiler always generated generic Alpha code. As the chip family developed from the EV4s, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the end of 7, was that they added instructions. To most people, they were probably not even known. But the big change occurred in the EV5.6 and EV7 core of the Alpha processor. They inserted additional instructions to manipulate word and bytes on the computer. So instead of using the clock cycles necessary to move an entire long word or quad word, you now can make references by byte and word. Now, a lot of your applications actually take full advantage of that in your coding. However, prior to that version of the compiler and the hardware platforms, you were paying a lot of extra cycles of the CPU. Now that we can recompile the Alpha operating system and saying, hey, look, you're no longer constrained. We're going to let you fully use the hardware instructions that have been there all along. Like application code, which was compiled optimally, now the operating system as well has been compiled optimally. These particular instructions can give us somewhere between 20 to 60% reduction in actual code paths that the processor actually has to execute. So thinking about it in terms of the fact that, let's say you have a saturated CPU, or several, you possibly now, they may be with PE driver, or lock manager, or RMS, or the XQP, things that you really couldn't tune for. Now what we've done is by recompiling these particular images from the same source code pool, we now can execute the same instructions and the same functionality with 20 to 70% less instructions. So the processors now, instead of being maxed out, have actual room to grow to either do more work or different additional tasks for your application code.
And to add just a little bit more on this, at least on the application side, is that we do have a white paper. This was generated years ago on how to get the most out of your EV6, EV7 systems for your application. So it is a little white paper. It's only about 10 pages long or so, and it goes over how to build your application to take advantage of these new hardware instructions built in these later chipsets on Alpha. So this is basically what we did, but again, there's a white paper available for users for the application level as well.
This is a little bit more deeper dive for you people who are really interested in the actual instructions. This is just a listing of what the actual instructions are. So for people who do machine level or assembly level coding, you'll recognize these. However, for people who are doing C coding, Fortran coding, BASIC, these are now any type of manipulation that actually only accesses either a word or a byte of data at a time. Also, the square root function now, instead of being done in software, is actually done in hardware instruction set. The floating point instructions are very important to realize. Many of us have grown up from VAX to Alpha to possibly other machines. And our applications codes were designed to utilize VAX floating point. Well, you all know that the Alpha processor executes IEEE floating point mathematics. Hence, always a conversion had to occur for people who retained their data sets in VAX floating point format. These particular instructions now are single instructions to make those migrations and conversions automatic, saving a tremendous amount of use of the runtime library and getting a faster execution cycle.
Next.
A little bit more just to show you what the compiler switch looks like. Most of you who've done this kind of application coding should recognize these things. So show us the actual numbers, right? You want to know how much of this really has been done. And I'll let Eddie speak to this as well. But for word and byte instructions, as the first slide indicates, we've actually optimized and had optimization in 16,000 modules within the operating system. For floating point, again, an operating system typically does not use floating point instructions, typically for the operating system kernel. Not in all cases, but in most cases, operating system functionality is done in integer mathematics. However, for the people who did use floating point to do calculations, to time calculations and rounding, those modules in the operating system, 994 modules actually did use floating point within the kernel of the operating system. Now, as far as out of order execution, A lot of stuff has been in the press about being able to gather statistics or information off of processors that do out-of-order execution. Okay, we can have a really long discussion on it. We're not going to go down there here. I am willing to entertain any questions or emails at a later time, but rest assured that the out-of-order execution mechanism of the alpha processor chip does not expose the system to vulnerabilities. That out-of-order mechanism was to optimize the code paths within the processor and also to optimize the use of the caches that are on that machine. So out-of-order execution now are granularity hints that the compiler will actually insert into the code to actually help you figure out what your most frequent path of branching is being taken and feed that to the hardware so the hardware can make better predictions on where your next instruction is going to come from, and hopefully it'll be prefetched in cache. So that's one of the really important aspects of this. Also, there are some people who've been very clever, and they actually use floating point instructions in integer mode, so they can actually execute 4 instructions per clock cycle.
And one extra note on the out-of-order execution, reference to the Spectre meltdown on the x86 chips. Within VSI, we have been unable to reproduce that particular flaw on the alpha processor. That's going backwards, isn't it? There we go. Al?
Yes, so what we have now for as far as the performance build goes, the other things that you guys can do and what we are still looking at, and we're working with Eddie's team as time permits and as customers need, is that we're actually looking at using some of the other compiler switches to actually inline some of the routines. Again, back to a programming model, a lot of times when you call a function from your application code, you literally are making a call or a jump instruction. That jump instruction may jump into a system service, a runtime library, typically causing maybe a cache miss. When we say inlining into the operating system, we're telling the operating system that, hey, this function, this intrinsic is used so often that we would rather have you inline the code than to actually call a jump and get a potentially take on a cache miss or a cache hit or a page fault. So what we've done also now is we're starting to look at the code to see what other optimizations we can make of potentially getting performance benefit by inlining specific modules that the kernel uses frequently that we could possibly inline. Okay, so here is a graphic. Everybody likes pictures. So this is a picture that takes a little bit of mathematics to generate, but it gives you a very quick view of the amount of coverage that the changing in these compiler options made to the actual core of the VMS operating system. And you can see some modules made very little difference, but some modules made a tremendous difference. And Eddie's got some slides now that he's going to share with you that will show you some of the actual, what does that mean as far as performance? But we also would like for you guys then to think about how this may affect your application as well.
Okay, so the test environment that we use to test. Now, keep in mind that VSI does not have, in our standard QTV test of, suite that we use, we don't have any specific tests to test for byte, word, load, store instructions within the CPU. So we use the standard test and some other tests that we have available to us. However, the environment we tested with different I/O. Basically, it's a fiber channel SAN infrastructure, 1 gig to 10 gigs, depending upon the server for the network. We use various servers. We use the RH2800s, the I2s, the I4s, and also with the blades, we also used BL86870 class servers. But on the storage arrays, we use pure storage array, we use EVAs and MSAP2000s. We use both 2 gig and 8 gig series switches, depending upon the environment. We also used on the 2 gig side, with the alphas, we did most of the testing on the ES47s was what we typically used for the alpha disks that we used, or the alpha servers that we used. So we basically ran 4 tests. different class of tests. The first test was using, there you go. So we used IO Hammer, and the second part of that test was using the file exerciser. We ran those in conjunction with each other. You can see some specifics there. The second test we ran just IO Hammer by itself. The third test that we ran just a LINPACK suite, and then the fourth test, we ran an IO file system, IO test exerciser on an unstructured file system. So mainly, we were just doing block transfers to and from a disk, unstructured, no file system whatsoever. So these are the four types of tests that we ran, the four series, if you will. So the results, just to go through this pretty quickly, since time is becoming an issue now, we're already 40 minutes into this, but the optimized build, you can see, is anywhere from 23 to about 78% more efficient in QIOs per second. And again, this is the first test suite that we ran, and you can see how that varies, again, depending upon the IO subsystem that we have available. And you may wonder why that is so, but this has to do with RMS. RMS has given us a lot of the gains in the structured file system environment. With the bytes per second, you can see the EVA gave us the best, but anywhere from 23 again to around 28% better bytes per second in our environment. So again, first test results. So the second test result that we ran with the IO file exerciser by itself, we received anywhere from -1% for the MSA to more than 120% for just doing a shadow disk environment, within the server itself. The pure storage IO got the most with 37% performance increase here with QIOs. And for bytes per second, the next slide, you can see again -1% on the EVA up to around 30% on the pure. Again, your mileage will vary depending upon the IO infrastructure you have in place and your environment you have set up. The third test, running the LINPACK suite, we didn't notice much of a difference in this because I think the LINPACK suite that we ran is already optimized. So there was no additional optimizations to be made with the byte word instruction. So you can see the difference in this is very minimum, and it's basically a wash. Then the fourth test, this is an unstructured file system comparison. And again, we didn't notice very little difference. It's almost identical between the unoptimized and the optimized version of VMS. And again, this is unstructured. RMS was not present. So RMS has a lot of byte word requirements within it. When we're doing the block transfers from a disk, we're doing it in 512 byte chunks, so we don't have any byte word manipulation. So we didn't see the performance advantages in this environment here. But again, these are standard tests we had available to us within VSI, within a QTV group, without writing anything specific. These represent, if you will, real-world type exercises we have, environments that may be present. Another proof point here, if you will, is that even within VSI, we still use VMS to do builds. And our build time on alpha went from 41 minutes down to 36 minutes. So we got about a 12+% performance increase, if you will.
Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the actual customer reactions to these. And these are notes from some of my customer base that I've accumulated, and I'd like to share with you as well. So when we're talking about IO rates to disk, we're seeing approximately a 10 to 20% reduction in CPU utilization. This particular customer has a interesting model, and that is the way their software works and the way it was designed is it will maximize whatever platform it's placed on. The whole goal of this application is to move data as quickly as physically possible through various stages of pipeline processing to rest on disk eventually and to go out to distribution. So CPUs are designed to be fully utilized. What happens now is when we see a reduction in the operating system's use of the operating system that gives of the CPUs, that gives us much more headroom for the application, hence the application runs faster. So what we're doing is we're looking to this application, these modifications, to be actual reduction. We're trying to see if this new operating system with the way it was built will actually give us more of the CPU to use for application purposes and less for the operating system to do for the same function. The customer's application in this particular model is being written in Ada. Ada modules are optimized in part of this build. When the VSI team did the build, Ada RTLs are provided with the operating system, so they were included in the build. So the Ada modules were in fact now optimized as well. Now maybe a lot of people aren't running Ada anymore, but also for some of the other standard RTLs, the Fortran RTL, Basic, those RTLs all did receive modifications and enhancements for this build. Next. Shadowing performance got a lot faster because, again, the CPUs didn't get saturated. So they actually saw a reduction between 8 and 22% in wall clock time for merging and doing full copy shadow sets. This is a big savings. This is otherwise was looked at as downtime. So this is a huge reduction in the amount of downtime to do the day-to-day processing. Please keep in mind that those slides did save from 732. This particular customer did lock themselves into 732, so they also gained all of the benefits that went into VMS from 732 to 8.4. Those are also a lot of improvements. So not everything was the performance build, but the performance build helped substantially.
Thank you, Al and Eddie, for going through and really taking us through a deep dive of the products, the analysis, the data that leads to the, in particular, the Alpha Performance Build product and the benefits that can bring to customers. Just to reiterate some of those tools for modernizing your Alpha systems, we talked a little bit about the fact that VSI now offers L1 and L2 support for older HP OpenVMS versions. Along with this, you should be aware that effective May 1st of this year, VSI is really handling on a worldwide basis probably a little bit over 90% of the existing OpenVMS support contracts, whether through HPE or VSI Direct. That's again another step demonstrating HPE's leaving the platform and VSI becoming truly the flag bearer of the OpenVMS platform. As Al and Eddie have very professionally gone through with you, details on the upgraded licenses and the full support, products and services and support from our best-in-class VSI dedicated support team. And we also have VSI Cloud Solutions and, of course, the x86. So specific to the upgraded licenses, in summary, we offer the VSI licenses and VSI support in a bundled package. The advantages you get in working with us, of course, you're working literally with the owner of the platform, the engineering and development team that's developing the new products that Eddie referred to, with version 8.5 and 9.2 already on the roadmap. The benefits of having the upgraded VSI licenses, which they have both gone through in detail, and of course the rights to new versions for future licenses when you're on VSI support. Just to review quickly, the VSI pricing model for Alpha is a bit different than it is for Integrity, but it's fairly straightforward. It goes back to the digital heritage and using the workgroup, departmental, and enterprise bundles, and when combining the OE and the layered products together with the support package, that makes the purchase and the installation very convenient and very straightforward for Alpha users. Again, Eddie mentioned, as well as I, the future versions coming up for Alpha, version 8.5 in early 2019, and the x86, or the version 9.2, which will be offered in the same year as the x86 product. VSI Cloud, this is a fairly new offering from VSI. It's powered by AVTware, and it's basically offering an opportunity for users who do not have the ability to wait for the x86 product to be available. It gives them an interim step for a cloud offering for VAX as well as Alpha environments to take you off that virtualizing of the aging hardware, allows you to virtualize the aging hardware. Again, you can upgrade to VSI OpenVMS licenses. Hypervisors are supported, and either VSI can host or the cloud provider of your choice. Speaking of the x86, this is just a brief update. Our first boot on x86 is, the timeline for that is in September of this year. Later this year, there will be an early adopters kit coming out for selected customers and ISVs based more on the content as opposed to anything else. Then version 9.1 will be a general EAK release scheduled for late 2019, and that will be available to all customers, ISVs, and partners. And then, of course, the full release later on in 2020. Just a couple of general updates. We have briefly mentioned VAX. We are now offering, VSI is offering 24/7 OpenVMS technical support, L1 and L2 on VAX systems. We've talked about the consulting, and again, the pricing on this is very similar to Alpha and being tiered. And a couple of coming attractions. We are scheduling a series of regional events where we will be both in Europe and in North America in the fall of this year and spring of next year. We have scheduled our OpenVMS bootcamp for the spring of next year, and our next webinar is scheduled for September 18th. So with that, we'd like to thank you for being patient and hopefully have gained something from this presentation. Just to make you aware, this presentation will be on the VSI website in approximately 48 hours. And also to make you aware, the white paper that Eddie has referenced, as well as comments from Al on referencing materials, are available to you at info@vmssoftware.com. And now we'd be pleased to take any questions, and you can do that through the chat line. So we are open to your questions at this point.
They're slow putting in questions.
You guys did such a great job. Answer all of them. You want to comment on this question, Eddie?
Yes, the commercial release will be in 2020. It's confirmed for x86 version, yes. That's version 9.2. Further questions? Comments?
Here's a question from Bill. Eddie?
Yes, the 4 gigabit fiber channels adapters for Alpha Server PS4780s. There's boot support. Yes, there's boot support for those. The 4 gig adapters, we actually get them through Mnemonics Corporation. So that's, we test those here at VSI. So yes, they are available through Mnemonics.
Question from Vincent. Will the x86 version be binary compatible to Titanium Alpha VAX?
No, it's not binary compatible, but it is source compatible. Remember, it's a new platform, so each platform has its own binaries. You can't take, for example, a VAX image, run on Alpha, or run on Integrity or an x86. So you have to recompile ruling for each platform. But the goal of offering updated Alpha releases to be equivalent to what is available in x86 is to make it easier to migrate to a new platform. That is, if you're running natively. If you want to take an x86 or a VAX Alpha image and run it on x86 or on Integrity, then you'll need a translator to do that. We have been working on a translator. I don't have any, and the translator would be from Alpha to x86. I don't have any timelines at this moment as far as completion for that, but it is something we have worked on. Did that answer that question?
Another question from Anthony, is the alpha being used for blockchain technology? And if so, where?
Not sure. I know if you're speaking specifically of Hashgraph, which is a very faster version, if you will, or implementation of blockchain, then the Hashgraph is dependent upon version 8 of Java, which is not available on Alpha. So I'm not sure if Hashgraph could work unless we can convert it to C code first and then run it that way. But that's the only way I know to do it.
Another question, is there going to be a goal of garnering third-party layered products to the x86 platform?
Yes, we have, VSI has an ISV program. We are contacting, daily and weekly, different partners out there that we know that we would like to, that our customers run their applications. We actually have some ISVs contact us. So that, it's a two-way street there. But if you, in your environment, or if you have customers, or if you in your environment have ISVs or products that you need to run in your environment that you don't see listed on our public pages, then please do let us know. We don't know of all of the ISVs out there, and not only do we need just the name ISV, but if you have contact information as well, that would help us tremendously. That way we can get right with the correct person in order to start the relationship to get, the particular product that you want on OpenVMS, supported. But we are working with ISVs as quickly and as we can.
There's a question from John. We are planning to exit OpenVMS Alpha platform by 2020. Is it recommended that we move support contract from HP to VSI for the duration of this period? Yes. No, John, we can help you in that transition, so, and we're happy to do so.
Hi, Terry. This is Kathy Ferris. Can I add something to that?
Of course, Kathy.
So while HP has long managed the service contracts, one of the advantages in shifting the support contracts to VSI is that you, along with getting newer software releases, as VSI updates the product set, you end up with a long, stable, single vendor, and that can be much easier for your organization to work through. And as contracts linger and HP divorces itself more and more from the VMS product, I think it will be much more beneficial for all of the customers to have a direct contract with the vendor providing the service as well as the updates.
Thank you, Kathy. Great comment. Next question, what about PathWorks and Multinet NFS3 support on VSI OpenVMS?
Okay, well, PathWorks is HP, but actually wasn't even an HP product. It was a product they licensed from, actually, I think it came from AT&T, was the maintainer of the code base. I don't think that relationship still exists, so PathWorks is pretty much a dead-end product. The replacement is Samba. We are coming out with a new version of Samba that is SMB v3 compatible, and that will be in the September timeframe of this year. So in September, we should have a new version of Samba available. As far as Multinet, we do support Multinet. In fact, Multinet is the base of our new VSI TCP/IP stack. It will be released the first week of August of this year. So we will have, the first release there, which is built on Multinet 5.5, and NFS version 3 is supported within our first release. So that support will be there. But as far as on versions 8.4 of HPE, the VSI TCP/IP stack and the new version of Samba, since VSI is the entity that's actually doing it, our kits only install on VSI versions of the operating system. So if you need access to these particular products, the newer products, then please contact VSI for upgrade information.
Any other questions for now? Well, as we like to try to start on time and end on time, we would like to thank you all for your participation. Again, we've had individuals from at least 4 different continents on this webinar, and we appreciate whatever time zone you're in, your willingness and excitement to be a part of this. Thank you for the questions. Would like to thank in particular Al Meyer from IOMAXIS. Thank you, Al, for your time and your input and your expertise on this webinar. And Kathy as well, thank you for chiming in. And as always, Eddie Orcutt, our Vice President of Software Engineering, we appreciate it. Again, this webinar has been recorded and will be available on the VSI website in the next 48 hours. Thank you. We appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to your participation in future VSI webinars. Thanks again. Have a good one.